I want to talk about using the sense of light to improve the color in your painting, both in the sunlight and the shadow. Because we're using photographs here, and the color in photographs isn't very good 90% of the time. It's not going to have enough contrast, not going to be light enough, not going to be strong enough, especially more dramatic lighting like this painting. This is by Edgar Payne, California Landscape. And you can see foreground is in shadow, but the light hits the top of the trees, the background trees, and the mountains, and pushing the blues in the shadow and the blue violets and all this color in the sunlight. It's very strong for distance because of that low light in the evening. It is very warm, a lot of orange, red orange in that light. So it really affects the color on the mountain in the sunlit area. Now this light area here is not as strong color-wise or as intense as it is in the middle ground. There's no sunlight in the foreground. So there's a difference. You can see the light here on this tree is a lot stronger than the light back in here on the background mountain. So there's a big jump in intensity of color, but still very strong for a background color. And very orange. The evening light has a lot of orange, red orange in it, so you can see the greens on this sunlit tree right here are very orange green, and a lot of orange, red orange in the mountains back there as well. So I really want to push that color to suggest it more. Same thing in the shadows, more blue, blue-violet than what I see. And the dark's darker. He gets, I haven't seen this original, just seen it in photographs, but the darks here get too black. I'm sure there's a color there. It's not just a black, but there's a strong contrast again between the value, pushing it more than what you see in a photograph. But mainly the color. We want to really talk about pushing the color in both sunlight and shadow to increase the sense of light. So the reference we're going to be using here is a photograph of a ranch, similar lighting to the Edgar Payne. And I want to do a couple of things. I want to push the sunlight here. This is pretty strong here, but I want to even push it more because, again, looking at that area in the mountains in the background, then looking at the mountains here, there's a similarity there, but it can be pushed, which really increases that sense of light. And I look at this and that looks pretty good, but if I paint it just like this, trying to match it, it won't have the same effect. It'll look a lot duller than it does in the photograph. Mainly because we think of the photograph as reality. So we really don't question it, but then when we copy it exactly, it doesn't have the same impact. Same thing in this hill that's kind of in the middle ground. I want it cooler, less warm. And there's still that local color of that dirt, which is kind of a pale, pale orange, cool orange, but I want to push it a bit more towards the cooler side to increase the contrast of cool shadow here and light warm here. Shadows are pretty strong here too, and I might want to push them a bit more. Again, looking at Hansen Puthoff's pretty strong blues in there. They're also very simplified. And we want to do that here, simplify a lot of this detail in here to make it read better. That increases the sense of light because it keeps your colors cleaner when you don't keep going over and over it to do tiny detail. You break it up too much of little darks and lights and you really lose any sense of light with all the detail. Then the second thing I want to do is, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with sense of light, but it's the idea of working with the photograph to make it work better light-wise and also shape-wise. These trees here, I want a shape in here, and I can kind of see it a little bit. I want a better shape than what the photograph gives me, so that I can kind of see that shape in here. There's just no foliage on it. This cottonwood has mistletoe on it. That's these big clumps on here, and they just kind of kill the tree, and so I never want to paint it in there. But I want to kind of simplify this shape in here and have a tree shape that works a lot better. More like that in there. So that it gives me a shape that I can paint. I can't paint this. There's no shape there. I want to change it to fit better. Not that I couldn't work with the bare trees. I think that would work fine, but I would rather have a more solid shape, mainly because I want more sunlight hitting the tops of these trees. So changes I made here, starting with these trees first, you can see I filled it out. And what I generally do, this is, I have a lot of reference, and I have it on the computer, and I break it up by region. So I have Arizona and the different parts of Arizona, and this is in Tucson. But I have a lot of photographs of cottonwoods, which is what this tree is. I'm going to make them both cottonwood. And I know the cottonwood probably wouldn't be this light. This might be more of a eucalyptus tree or sycamore tree. But I don't really care. I'm not probably a tree expert, might pick my paintings apart, but I'm more painting for painting's sake than showing just the right biology on a tree or certain kind of flower. Or it's to me it's about shape and color and value. So I do whatever it takes to make the painting look better. So I will look in other references, like these are from a file I have of Wyoming trees. And these have nice shapes. They're cottonwoods, so I can replace those in there, these shapes back in here. So I can pull up these trees, and I know New Mexico file, California file, Wyoming, Montana, a lot of cottonwoods, a lot of aspen, pine trees, of course, but I'll use that. This is these are cottonwoods from Wyoming. But I will take pictures for composition's sake. I see a good composition, good lighting, but then I also take pictures just for individual objects, in this case the trees, although I kind of like this composition. It's very subtle, not real exciting, but it's kind of nice, the giant cottonwoods and the smaller background. But this is a nice shape I can put in there, and in here too. So I have a ton of reference I can pull from. I used to just have boxes and boxes of photographs, and now everything's gone digital. I can just keep it all on the computer. So getting back to our picture here, I changed the shape pretty good, real definite shape, and I put sunlight on the tops. Now when I do that, I have to really think about where the sunlight's coming from the right side, so shadows are going to be on the left, and I want to create a design of shadow shape on there to make it work better. And again, I can use other images of trees to get the shape, but I might not have the right lighting that I want. So this is where I want to push it. And studying paintings like Hanson Puthoff, you can see he's got some sunlight hitting the tops of these trees. Makes it a little more dramatic when I can push that. And then making a lighter trunk just to create more contrast. Then in the background here, it's still, that orange gets a little dull. That orange hitting the orange light hitting the mountains gets a little dull, so I pop the orange a bit more. The equivalent of white and cadmium orange hue, and maybe a little bit of violet. Then I came back with kind of a alizarin, crimson and white, and a touch of cad yellow light for more of a kind of a cooler, brighter red. And alizarin's pretty cool. You add yellow to it, it warms it up slightly, but it's still kind of a cool red that a lot warmer than the shadow, so it works. But with the pale orange and the pale kind of reddish violet with some yellow in it, it really brightens up those mountains. And push the shadows a bit more bluish violet, just to create that contrast between the warm here and the cool there. Then I also cooled off the hill right in here and the hill back in there. So you can see I just added a little bit of violet to that. So in my painting that would be the equivalent of white and ochre or white and orange, getting it the right value. Can't be as light as the sunlit area, but it's pretty light. And then adding violet to it, either right on the canvas or I can mix it on the palette. And I darkened and cooled the trees in here, the lower shrubbery that's on these hills, just to create more contrast, and then a few of the bigger, darker trees in there. Made a tree here bigger, darker. I darkened these. It just creates more contrast with the sunlit background mountains and the middle ground and foreground trees being a lot darker. So again, just increasing that contrast and pushing the temperature. And I could have gone a little darker right in here because these would be darker accents, and they're too dark. So I wouldn't give them quite that dark, but they give me some dark accents. Can scatter them around in a few places that pulls that foreground forward. Now I wouldn't leave them this hard edged or this dark. I would just drag a brush through them to lighten them slightly. But again, this overall, I'm increasing the light, creating more interest in the trees to create a better painting.